Good afternoon. We'll call to order the City of Newport Beach Public Facilities Corporation Annual Meeting. Madam Clerk.
The record will reflect that all members of the Public Facilities Corporation are in attendance.
And public comments?
Public comments are invited on agenda items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. The Newport Beach Public Facilities Corporation has a discretion to extend or shorten the speaker's time limits on agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn your cell phones off or set them in the silent mode.
If you have any members of the public who would like to come forward with their comments, please come forward.
Soon to be elected Chair Dixon and members of the Facilities Financing Corporation Board. My name is Jim Mosier, and I believe the meat of your agenda is item 2, where you'll be reviewing the annual financial statements. So I had a couple of comments I wanted to make about those. I did submit some comments in writing, and I wanted to thank your Chief Financial Officer for privately providing the answers to some of those to me and directing me to the city's comprehensive annual financial report, in which there's an explanation about the public facilities, whatever we call this, Public Facilities Corporation in footnote 1A. Surprisingly, that note tells me not only that the corporation is a legal entity separate from the city, but also that no separate financial statements are prepared for it, yet you do seem to have separate financial statements that I've not previously seen, which is what you're reviewing tonight. In the notes to that, and in the footnote to the comprehensive annual financial report of the city, this mentions that the certificates of participation, which I think are important to understand because on tonight's city council agenda is a possible measure that would allow the voters to vote on future issuances of these. It says that they were issued by the city, yet somehow the corporation is now responsible for paying them. And indeed, in the financial report, we see lease payments coming in and debt payments going out. It also says that in the note here on page 7 that the city leases this property to the corporation somehow leases it back to the city. I do not understand how that works. A lot of leasing going on, but I think the reason we're here is because somebody borrowed money against the property. And in view of that, I just had a couple of questions that might lend clarification both to the directors of the corporation and to the public, members like me who don't fully understand what this meeting is about. My questions are these. Who actually owns the property that we have here? Who is leasing what from whom? Who is responsible for paying the debt? Is it the city or is it the corporation? And if the directors of the corporation decided not to make these payments, which you're reviewing in your annual report, how would that affect the city's ownership interest in the property, if it has one, and its ability to use the property? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Please come forward.
Good evening. Thank you. Is this the time I make comments on agenda item number 3 on the short-term lodging?
No.
Okay.
We'll be doing that in the study session.
Talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comments related to the Newport Beach Public Facilities Corporation annual meeting? See none. I guess Mr. Finance Director, or no, I was just going to ask you a follow-up to Mr. Mosier's question. The financial statements that are in the financial report that you'll be giving were submitted and included in the staff report, correct?
Correct. We include the financial statements for the corporation in the city's financial report as a component unit of the city. They're not really available under separate cover. They're not audited separately. So that's why we make that reference that they're not generally available separately, but they are included and audited within the city's financial report. And we're just providing it to the board as an excerpt as a matter of courtesy to the board.
And for clarity's sake, too. All right, thank you. Coming back to the council, we'll proceed to item number C, election of officers. May we have a motion, please?
Before I make the motion, may I briefly ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Staff, would you please answer Mr. Mosher's questions if you were able to catch them all? I'm not sure if you heard them all.
I didn't hear each one of those, so I'm not sure if it's better we could answer Mr. Moser's question separately.
Well, the reason why I think we're all learning more about the process, present company not excluded, so I would love to hear. Jim, do you want to give your questions again, if you don't mind?
Question one was who actually owns the property that we have here? I assume it's the city, but I don't know.
Next question, sorry, Jim.
Question two was who is leasing what from whom? Because the one sentence says that the city is leasing the property to the corporation. The next sentence says the corporation is leasing the property to the city. Leaves me in a state of confusion. Third question was who is responsible for paying the debt? Does the debt belong to the city or does it belong to the corporation? If it belongs to the corporation, the fourth question was, should the directors of the corporation choose not to pay the payments that are being reviewed tonight, how does that affect the city's ownership interest, if it has one in the property, and its ability to use the property?
I think it says in the staff report that the city is responsible for the debt, but Mr. Kiff or Mr. Finance Director, if you want to respond.
Sure. So the corporation is the lessor. They act as the counterparty to the city in the lease financing. The corporation assigns the rights to the lease and the right to the lease payments to a trustee. So the city essentially makes direct payments to the trustee, and the trustee pays the bondholders or certificate holders in this particular case.
And who is responsible?
So the facility, I'm sorry, the Public Financing Corporation is the lessor. We are leasing the property from the corporation and making payments on that. Legally, I believe the city owns title to the property, and it's just an integral component to a lease financing transaction to have this middle party, this counterparty to the lease.
Mr. Kiff, did you want to add anything more to that? Okay.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the election of the officers as typically done, with the mayor to serve as chairperson of the corporation, Mayor Pro Tem, which would be myself, to serve as vice chairperson of the corporation, and council members to make up the corporation board of directors.
Do we have a second? Okay. Let's call for the vote.
Oh, my apologies. Hold on. Sorry about
We know
that.
what the results are.
Voting. There we go. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Moving on to item D, the approval of the minutes. May we have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 11, 2015 meeting of the Public Facilities Corporation?
Move to approve.
Second? Okay. May we have a vote?
Motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Item E, current business, review of the annual financial statements. So, Dan, will you like to lead in that discussion, please? Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the primary and actually sole purpose of the Public Facilities Corporation is to act as the counterparty to a lease and a lease financing transaction. Currently, there's only one outstanding lease financing, which is the 2010 certificates of participation. These were used to refinance both the Central Library original certificates of participation and partially finance the Civic Center construction of the Civic Center, the park, the parking structure, and the library expansion. For the year, the debt service amounted to $10.5 million for fiscal year 16. We received a federal interest subsidy of $2.4 million, which reduces our net debt service to $8.1 million. The current principal balance outstanding is $110 million, and the remaining net interest, or interest net of the federal subsidy is expected to be $78.1 million over the next 24 years. In substance, these were the main transactions of the year. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have about the financial statements or the transaction of the corporation.
All right. Bring it back up here to council. Thank you. Mr. Piotr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dan, we just got an explanation that the city leases the facilities to the Public Finance Commission or corporation, and then they lease it back to the city, and then they use the lease revenues to pay the debt service. Why doesn't the money go from the city to the Public Finance Corporation and then to the trustee? Why does it go directly to the trustee?
Because the financing corporation, as is the norm in these transactions, assigns the rights to the trustee.
So you don't even have a bank account for the Public Finance Corporation?
That is correct.
So the reserves that are detailed in the financial report, where are those parked?
They're with the trustee, and that's why it's reported cash with fiscal agent. And in substance, these financial statements are a pro forma, as if it did flow through the financing corporation. This is what it would look like. In reality, it flows directly to the trustee, who is the
Just for ease of business, then?
correct.
As part of the prospectus, when we issued the certificates of participation, and in this case, they're not against the actual property, they're against the lease revenues. All right, so it's the lease revenues by us, a good quality credit tenant, that they actually issue the certificates of participation. Am I correct?
I didn't hear I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the certificates of participation, normal debt would be, it would be against the actual physical piece of property. You would have recourse against the property. In this case, the certificate holders do not have recourse against the physical property. They have only recourse against the lease revenues that the city is paying the finance corporation.
Yes, so they have a proportionate share in the lease revenue stream. So their interest is in the lease payments.
Right, and that's what makes it legal to do, because otherwise we would have had to float a bond, go into the voters and everything else. In this case, there's an exception in the code that allows leasing to occur, and they figured out how to borrow against the leasing.
Sure, if a lease has two specific outs, meaning one that they are subject to annual reappropriation is one out. The other is if there's an abatement certificate, meaning that we don't have access to the facility, then the city is precluded from making debt service payments. And the courts have upheld that those two stipulations together or individually do not constitute legal indebtedness in form. In substance, the city does have an obligation to make payments on that obligation.
Right, and so this is an education process a lot for the citizens as well. The two outs, annual appropriation, does that just mean that, hey, the city council approves a budget every year and we approve the ability to pay that lease?
Correct. So you could decide we're not going to make not appropriate that debt service payment, and then you don't have, since it's not a requirement, you don't have a long-term obligation. You have a one-year lease that's renewed each year.
What would happen to the city if we did that?
We would be in default and our credit rating would be difficult to issue additional debt.
We'd be in default of what? Since we don't have debt, or this isn't debt.
So we have agreed to certain covenants, and
We'd
one is-
be in default of the lease that we have with the finance corporation, correct?
well, there's a contract between us and the bondholders, which is usually the indenture or lease purchase agreement. And in there, we covenant to actually do certain things, and including paying the bondholders annually. And if we don't do that, we would be in default, and I think our credit would suffer, but I'm not sure what other recourse they have.
Because it doesn't involve the full faith and credit of the city.
Correct.
And then the other obligation is if the building were to become uninhabitable. And does the city carry insurance in case the building were to become uninhabitable?
We do. That would be a requirement to protect the bondholders as well.
And how do we do that insurance?
We're self-insured. We have, I guess, two components. We have property and casualty insurance, as well as so we're self-insured for injuries that may be incurred as a result of.
But if the building were to fall down because of an earthquake and become uninhabitable, in effect, we're insuring that.
We are
So
insured.
the full faith and credit of the city is really at stake as an insurance company, if nothing else, in that situation. So we get around the bond issue by going ahead and doing leasing. They borrow money based on the leasing, and we're obligated to make the payments. And the way the payments happen, as indicated on the finance reports that we've got in front of us, they go through the finance corporation, although it's on paper only, and go right to the trustee, who is a third-party agent that pays the certificate holders direct, however many there may be and who they may be. And they get a fee for that. They're in effect our banker or our escrow agent to handle those fees.
That is correct.
Yeah, I hope that clarifies it for everybody. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments up here, questions from the council? All right, we'll open it up to public comments. Please come forward. No, we don't need to? Okay. We have a motion to receive and file the financial report. Second? Okay. Let's vote, please.
With Councilmember or Director Piotr voting no, the motion carries 6-1.
All right. Madam Clerk.
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council, the Newport Beach Public Facilities Corporation. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
If the members of the public wish to speak, please come forward.
Chair Dixon, my name again is Jim Mosher. And I just wanted to emphasize the non-agenda comment that I submitted in writing. I think it's evident that the mechanism of how the Public Facilities Corporation operates, why we have it, the details of how it was created, and what rules it operates under, all of that is very difficult for the public to comprehend. I appreciated the attempt at an explanation. I didn't totally follow it. And so it seems to me, just as we have pages on our city website that explain each of the councils, it explains the city council itself, it explains each of our boards, commissions, and committees. It explains our various business improvement districts we have, who the officers are, how those districts were created, what they do. It would be very helpful if there was a page that condensed these technical footnotes into layman's language so the public understood what this corporation does, why it's meeting annually, and so on. And I don't think it would be too difficult to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please come forward. Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting of the Public Facilities Corporation. And now